الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا وحبيبنا ومولانا محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه وسلم أجمعين. The topic of this event is actually justice, the balance of it and where we stand in the face of justice. And as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, يا أيها الذين آمنوا كونوا قوامين بالقسط شهداء لله ولو على أنفسكم. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks us to stand firm in the face of for justice, to be maintainers of it, to be bearers of it, to make sure that it is upheld, even if it is against ourselves, against our families or our close relatives, or the people of our own tribe or our own, ethnicity. So basically, it's a very selfless concept that we have to absorb in Islam. And we have two speakers today, and the first of which is Brother Umar Atiyah. He's a Chicago native, and he's an avid community activist and an inspirational youth leader. He has several years of first-hand grassroots experience from his leadership role with Mass Youth and founding several community and youth development organizations such as Bridge, a local Indianapolis nonprofit which has had the mission to inspire and elevate ourselves and our communities to the highest of aspirations. Umar is a Purdue University alum and now lives in southern Indiana with his wife and his children. Umar Atiyah, فلتفضل.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونصلي ونسلم ونبارك على سيدنا وحبيبنا سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. I greet you with the ancient greeting of peace. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. It's the greeting that angels greet the human family with, and every prophet and messenger greeted his followers with, and taught everyone to greet everyone else with. I ask the high and exalted to have peace and blessings upon Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the one who came with the last message, the conclusion of the same message sent down to every prophet and messenger. To have peace and blessings upon him for what he sacrificed for us, and upon all those who follow his example until the day of resurrection. Our beloved sallallahu alaihi wasallam was one day sitting down with his best friend Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. And Abu Bakr noticed that his hair had gotten gray, and he hadn't noticed that before, and it was over a very short amount of time. And he said to him, "What made you turn gray so quickly? You're still young." And he said to him, without hesitation, "Shayyabatni Hudun wa akhawatuha." That what made me turn gray was the chapter of Hud and its sisters. Some people, when they hear that, they think he's talking about the Quran as a whole, but if you examine closer, there's a reason he chose Hud specifically as the chapter that made him turn gray. So when we examine the chapter of Hud, we ask ourselves, what about it is unique? Can anyone offer an answer, but you have to yell if you're going to answer? What makes chapter of Hud unique specifically out of the Quran to make the Messenger ﷺ go gray? Anyone? Or a guess? What's that? Yeah, Hud ﷺ was a prophet. But what about the chapter itself? Anyone? Yes, that's true. That is good. So you get whatever reward Omar is going to have for you. For getting closest. So there's a lot of prophets mentioned in the surah. But specifically, the surah was revealed to the prophet at a time in his journey where it had gotten to be a great hardship on him. It was after the year called the year of sadness. And the year after the year of sadness was a year where no one became part of his movement. It became completely stagnant. His effort was actually the most effort he had put in, with no results. The type of year where a wife would go to a husband and say, "I think it's time to put up this fight and work with what you've got so far, and let's worry about the family." It's the type of year where the followers would start giving up. So Allah reveals to him the chapter of Hud, which starts with the journeys of the prophets. And after each one, he says, "Fasbir." So be persistent and patient. you have to be persistent and patient no matter how hard it gets. The first one he starts with, Allah, is Nuh alayhi salam, who had a similar experience of calling people, talking about this message and this movement and this mission, and having stagnation, nobody accepting. For how long did that happen to Nuh? Anybody? 950 years. So here is the Prophet, peace and blessings upon him, experiencing a year of stagnation and feeling like, oh man, he's a human. The beloved, peace and blessings upon him, was human like you and I. We put in effort for a week or 2 weeks on a project and there's no movement. We want to stop. It's time for a new project. But our beloved, peace and blessings upon him, he wasn't like us. So he was patient for a year. But God saw in him that that human element is starting to take hold of him a little bit. Nothing's happening for a year. So he sends to him, wait a second. Your brethren before you. The first one I'm going to tell you about, this happened to him for 950 years. And then he tells him about Hud alayhi salam and about Salih alayhi salam, all of them prophets who had the same problem. Eventually, when they start talking about what this mission actually is, which I'm telling you this whole story so that I can tell you that we haven't yet told America what our mission actually is, and we'll get to that in a second. But once they start telling their people what their mission actually is, there's stagnation. There's a fight against them. There's slander against them, and then people stop accepting their message. They don't want to be harmed in their personal lives. So what happens is things start slowing down and results start stopping for a little bit, as a test also to those who are carrying the mission. But our beloved, peace and blessings upon him, was also given a very clear message in this surah as well. And the rest of us with him. And we've missed it as Muslim Americans. So I want to bring it back in front of us so we can examine it together. That message is that the whole point of our lives as human beings, the reason we're on earth in the first place, is to bring earth and the world and everyone in it back to what's befitting to God's glory. The justice and peace and freedom and liberty and happiness and upliftment that's befitting to God's glory. And that our connection with Him individually means that we accept that we'll take out of our own personal lives and out of the lives of our communities and the lives of our societies those things which are not befitting of God's glory. Example, Nuh alayhi salam, the first thing he says to his people, they say, after he tells them, worship none other than Allah. He says to them that I'm coming to you for nothing more than your own benefit. And they say to him, وَمَا نَرَاكَ اتَّبَعَكَ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ هُمْ أَرَاذِلُنَا بَادِيَ الرَّأْيِ. We don't see that those who followed you except are those who are the lowest caste among us, the ones that we segregate ourselves from. Because their societal ill, the predominant culture that they had, that community, was segregation between socioeconomic classes. So the first thing he addresses for them is that issue. He says to them, if you want to return to Allah, and you want Allah to be on your side, you can't judge people that way. He says to them, وَيَا قَوْمِ مَنْ يَنْصُرُنِي مِنَ اللَّهِ إِن تَرَدتُّهُمْ. Who's going to give me victory? Who's going to give me happiness other than God if I kick out that lower caste that you're talking about? But then to make it clearer to them, he says, وَلَا أَقُولُ لَكُمْ وَلَا أَقُولُ لِلَّذِينَ تَزْدَرِي أَعْيُنُكُمْ لَنْ يُؤْتِهَمُ اللَّهُ خَيْرًا اللَّهُ أَعْلَمُ بِمَا فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ. I'm not affirming your thoughts. So don't think that I'm saying to you, I can't kick them out because I'm afraid of God. I also don't agree with the way you judge. I can't say that they are any worse or better than you. Allah is the one who knows what's inside of them. إِنِّي إِذًا لَمِنَ الظَّالِمِينَ. If I do that, if I judge people based on how much money they make, or what color they are, or what type of food they eat, or what ethnicity they are, or how they speak the language with an accent or without, or how they dress, or whether they're from the wrong side of town. If I judge people based on that, I am truly an oppressor. And then he says to them, I am coming to you, at the end of the verses, I'm coming to you for nothing other than your own good. I'm not looking for money. God's the one who gives me the sustenance. So then listen to this, something we don't reflect on. We know that every community, when they kept rejecting their prophets, what did Allah do to them? What did Allah do to them? Destroyed them, right? But did we ever wonder how He destroyed them? Why that specific choice that Allah chose? Did anyone ever wonder that? How many people in here wondered, why would Allah choose, for instance, the flood for Nuh's people? Why would He choose that scream, which some people are scared when they hear about it? How could a scream kill people? That awful cry that killed Salih's people. Did anyone ever wonder what the choice was based on? What's that? Their strength. It was based on the thing that was making them proud, like they didn't deserve to have to change their ways. The flood, they wanted segregation. So the flood segregated. The flood kept those who had inside them goodness on the ship, safe. And those who didn't, they drowned. And it wasn't by families. And to make it real clear to us, Nuh's son, his heart. And we know it's his heart that he's seen in front of him about to drown. Because he says to Allah, he says to him after he sees him drown, he says to him, my son, come to the ship. لا عاصم اليوم من الله إلا أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. لا عاصم اليوم إلا الذي رحم. That there's no person who's going to protect today except the one who has compassion, Allah. And he says, because he said to him, I'm going to go to a mountain to save me. So later he says to Allah, إِنَّ ابْنِي مِنْ أَهْلِي وَإِنَّ وَعْدَكَ الْحَقِّ وَأَنْتَ أَحْكَمُ الْحَاكِمِينَ. He says, you're the wise of wisest, and my son is of me. He's from my family, and you promised me you'd protect me and those with me. He says, إِنَّهُ لَيْسَ مِنْ أَهْلِكَ. He's not from your family. He is a wrongful act. His whole existence is a wrongful act because he aligned his life to wrong. So he segregated man from his son, and not any man, the best man living, because they wanted segregation. So then Allah gives him the journey of Hud, alayhi salam. And the journey of Hud is that he goes to his people who have the worst foreign policy that has been known to man until that day. And they're the most powerful people on earth, and they use it to achieve self-interest. Their foreign policy is to wreak havoc in other nations and to take what's best for them. It might sound familiar from colonial times a little bit, but we will digress. So he says to them, my people, he says, إِنْ أَنْتُمْ لَا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا اللَّهِ إِنْ أَنْتُمْ إِلَّا مُفْتَرُونَ. He says to them, worship none other than Allah. See, we think that the da'wah of Allah is about each individual's personal life. It's about us going to a congregation in a building like any other religion and being looked at as another religion but the right religion. That's what we believe da'wah is about. That's what we consider da'wah, to make the pamphlets and to make the talks and to make the messages such that everyone knows this is the right religion. Whereas the prophets, peace and blessings upon them, the prophets, peace and blessings upon them, what they did is their message was first, don't worship other than Allah. And immediately with it was the fact that you have to change the societal ill. He says in the same ayah, Allah is quoting him, do not worship other than Allah. You're none other than self-interested wreakers of havoc. In antum illa muftarun. And then he says to them, if you follow Allah, وَيَزِدْكُمْ قُوَّةً إِلَىٰ قُوَّتِكُمْ. If you use your power for spreading justice on earth, He'll actually increase you in power. The power is not bad to have. To have that military might and that power, and to be able to take whatever is needed to be taken, to have the power to be able to do that, that's a good thing if what's being taken is justice. So He'll increase you in that power if you use it for justice, Hud says. Their societal ill was their foreign policy, being the worst on earth. So then Allah, high and exalted, He destroys them how? He destroys them with a storm for 7 nights and 8 days. And He says, because they were a community of giants compared to the rest of the nations around them. And He says, if you were to see the land afterwards, everything was destroyed. So Allah destroys them after their consistent rejection, of course, with the same way they used to use their talents and their skills unjustly, because they used to wreak havoc in the other nations. Then Salih alayhi salam, Allah then moves to Salih alayhi salam and tells the Prophet about his journey, that he went to his people and he said, and I'll paraphrase quickly, and he says to them, worship none other than Allah. And I see you using your technological advances for self-interest and for showing off. And you should spread the wealth amongst you instead and spread justice. So they say to him, how can you tell us to follow other ways other than the ones that we were born into and our forefathers followed? This is the way that our community is uplifted. That those who have the money, they show it off and they live higher. And those who don't, they live lower. So then he destroys them with something that is unfathomable. Even to this day, how can a scream kill a people? Because they were showing off their technological advances and using them to live in a way to show off to people instead of using them to spread justice. And then he concludes the journey of the prophets for the Prophet ﷺ with Shu'aib alayhi salam. The same thing. They almost say the same exact words. Do not worship other than Allah. That's an individual. That's an individual relationship and requirement. And then he says, وَلَا تَنْقُصُوا الْمِكْيَالَ وَالْمِيزَانَ. And do not cheat in the scale. Your economic policies are lousy. You have lousy regulation of your trade. Your SEC sucks. They don't know what they're doing. You need a whole new department and you're wasting people's tax dollars in order to not actually have just policies among them. They say to him, it's none of your business what we do with our money, and your Lord telling us what to do with our money, that's not the way of our forefathers. So Allah high and exalted destroys them. So the Prophet, peace and blessings upon him, is taught, not only your journey is going to be like this, because every prophet's journey was like this, but your journey is about, and he already knew that, but it's for us to know. Your journey is about that individual relationship leads to the justice being spread. And that those societal ills that you see, they can't be accepted. If you're the community and the movement following the Prophet's footsteps, your community is about moving the nation you live in, moving your people, because your people are your peers and your nation. Your people are not some far-off community that your parents were born in or even you were born in. Where you reside, that's your people. Lut alayhi salam wasn't actually even from the town that's mentioned in the Quran, and its name isn't mentioned in the Quran. Its name is only mentioned in the Hadith. What's mentioned in the Quran about his town is Qawmi Lut. Even though he was an immigrant, but the people are called the people of Lut because he's the prophet. He's the responsible one for the message of God and for the movement of Allah, high and exalted. So then those are his people. So wherever there's a community taking the baton to be the movement of God in that land, to spread justice and to remove the societal ills and to claim the oneness of God, which is synonymous with not being okay with the societal ills. Claiming the oneness of God is synonymous with desiring God's desired outcome for one's land and one's nation and one's people. Being The follower of God means that you can't sit happy with people having sadness due to those ills. Being the follower of God and his message means that you can't be comfortable spending the night full and a neighbor being hungry. So that if you're in Beverly Hills and you're only 13 miles away from Skid Row, where 20,000 homeless people live, you're not comfortable. And that is the movement that our nation needs today. Our nation, our American nation, needs a movement that hasn't yet happened. Needs the message of our beloved that hasn't yet been relayed. I want to play something for you very quickly. This is a famous football player. His name is Arian Foster. He's not a Chicago Bears player. I'm sorry about that. But they haven't gained respect over the last few weeks. Maybe yesterday was all right. But so I just want you to hear this piece.
What was the lowest time you ever had in your life, and how'd you pull yourself out?
Growing up, like I said, we were going through a lot of, hardships as a family. But I think the one that kind of broke the straw that broke the camel's back was when I saw my mother. She pawned her wedding ring to give us. Excuse me. We just had this conversation, Coop. I don't cry, man. She pawned her wedding ring to give us some food that night, and I just told myself that I wanted to do something with my life. That excuse me, I'm sorry. No, I'm all right, man. I just want to do something with my life that to make sure that, when I had a kid, that she never had to worry about the lights being on. She didn't have to worry about any of that. And I didn't care if I had to work 3 jobs or whatever, and that's why I don't complain too much, man, because, at the end of the day, we're all people, man, and we just want to smile. And, even when we were growing up and it was tough, that's one thing my family always had was, we smiled through it all. And that's why I try to remain as optimistic as possible.
Is your family smiling now?
So the reason I wanted to show you that is because everybody here, you can applaud, it's fine. It's Arian Foster's now. So the reason I wanted to show you that is because it actually, when I saw this, I can't remember how I got to see it, but it made me compelled to show it to my son. And I didn't actually think about showing it to him until one day we were out and he was complaining about something that my wife and I have a joke between us called first world problems. And we hope that this concept of what are real problems don't get lost for us, because we're believers in the message of God to our human family. And we're the ones tasked with raising the awareness of our peers in America to what is it that's missing? What is it that's wrong? Why are there 90 people who commit suicide every single day in America? Why are there 200 people who die of alcohol-related illnesses every single day in America? Why are there young men? Arian Foster is probably the happy ending example. But what percentage of young men and women who go through that struggle with their families actually make it out to a happy ending? It's a real low percent. The majority end up being the backbone of the pornography industry or the backbone of the drug industry. And when we talk about what the prophets were sent with and the message sent to our beloved, peace and blessings upon him, and that we're going to pick up this and recite it every single day as much as we can. The question is, what's the vision we're taking to our American nation of what can happen, of what is really possible for America, what that greater America can really be? And it doesn't need that we think that we have to have a whole lot of money rallied together or a whole lot of organizations rallied together. That would be nice, and it will happen one day. Because there is quite a dysfunctional situation that exists in our nation today in the name of Islam. And that dysfunction has to end. And there is a strategic vision that can be put together with the incredible minds that are residing in this room right now to end that dysfunction. But the question isn't can it? The question is, who will be with it? And when we talk about what do you stand for, we have to stand for the day when we're going to stand alone. Hopefully not naked, but most people naked, in front of God, asking us, what did you do with the time I gave you? What did you do with the fact that you were one of the few I gave the accountability and honor and responsibility of my message to America, of reforming and refining the situations that you knew I didn't love? Did you say to yourself at that time that those aren't Muslims, so it ain't my problem? Or did you say, actually, I have no clue if they're Muslims because they haven't even heard the message yet. And they could actually be better than any Muslim I know. But that's not why I'm going to help. I'm going to help because Allah does not accept what is happening in my nation today. And so I can't accept it. And we say to Allah then, I expended my energy and my time to bring my nation, America, closer to what you desire. What we stand for is to stand that day hearing Him, high and exalted, saying, you told the truth. Enter my paradise. Because He will ask, what did you do for me? ماذا فعلت فيه? In fact, the beloved, peace and blessings upon him, says there's going to be 3 people who are going to be the first asked that question. The very first 3 people being judged, they'll be asked that question. What did you do for me? And those 3 happen to be people that we all as human beings perceived as 3 of the best. And it's a long hadith, so I will suggest to you to find it. But the conclusion of it is that the 3 that we thought were best and likely were claiming Islam, they were Muslim by name and by their actions in terms of the religion. But their commitment to the mission was actually non-existent. And in the end, God tells them, you did the things you did so that the people around you would say, he did such and such. He gave a lot of money, or he recited a lot of Quran. And people said it for you. So you got what you wanted. Take him to the hellfire. This is the Prophet ﷺ quoting Allah about the first 3 to be judged. Now here's the good news, because the time is up for me, and I will yield to a much more inspirational speaker. The good news is that you and I are breathing and alive, and the movement of God hasn't started in America yet. And America needs a movement. America had a movement for liberty in the 18th century and transitioned from British America to the United States of America. It needed a movement for abolition in the 19th century and transitioned from being a union that had slaves treated ill to a union without slavery, with people still being treated ill. So another movement was needed in the 20th century so that people would be treated more equally. And the good Dr. King led the community and the nation to make that happen. And now a movement is needed in the 21st century so that the societal ills that are caused by our distance from God's love and our distance from reviving the true mission of our beloved can be revived through a strategic vision lent by understanding the true nature and essence of the message of our beloved sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that movement needs young men and women who believe it being possible. So the good news is that you and I are here and we can be part of such a movement. I ask Allah High and Exalted to send down His peace upon us all and to help us and accept us. And I ask you for your forgiveness for any mistakes.
Assalamu alaikum. Our next speaker is Brother Imam Zaid Shakir, who was born in Berkeley, California, and accepted Islam in 1977 while serving in the United States Air Force. He has a bachelor's degree in international relations from the American University in Washington, D.C., and a master's in political science from Rutgers University. He has studied across the Islamic world, studying in Egypt, Syria, and Morocco, and graduated from Syria's most prestigious Abu Nur University after 7 years of intensive study. He has co-founded many organizations and masajid, Masjid al-Islam, the Tri-State Muslim Educational Initiative, the Connecticut Muslim Coordinating Committee, and most recently, Zaytuna College in California. He has published numerous amount of works, two of which are The Heirs of the Prophets by Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali. He translated it into Arabic, and he translated also the Treatise for the Seekers of Guidance by Imam al-Muhasibi and offered a commentary upon it, which I actually highly recommend for anyone in this room. He's pretty much seen as our Imam in this country, so please give it up for your Imam, Imam Zaid Shakir.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Alhamdulillah, are you truly blessed to be able to take in the presentation you just took in. May Allah Ta'ala increase all of you in guidance and service and good. So as I understood, I was preparing to eat dinner. Someone said, you have a talk at the Embassy Suites. Okay. What's it about? Justice. So is it justice? Is that right? Justice. Okay. You have to be on the same page. So alhamdulillah, I think it's appropriate that as Muslims we talk about justice. I'll start by an incident that happened in Chicago O'Hare Airport. I flew in this morning from Canada, from Toronto, Reviving Islamic Spirit Conference in Toronto, Canada. I left the hotel 5 in the morning. The flight was at 7:30. We landed in O'Hare Airport. I don't remember anything about the flight. I just remember the plane taking off, the plane landing. I was gone. And in the airport, we met a friend of mine who teaches at UC Berkeley. He's a convert of Puerto Rican descent. And the thing that led him to Islam was he was leftist leaning in his politics. I mean, full-blown leftist, not leftist leaning. But in the Marxian scheme of justice and revolution, there's no spirituality. There's no room for God in the Marxian dialectical materialism. And in the Christian scheme, there are definitely liberation theology movements, but for many Christians, they're seen as something foreign. And so even one of the greatest opponents of liberation theology historically has been the Pope, a series of popes, challenging the orientation of a lot of Christians in Latin America who are overwhelmingly Catholic to engage in liberation theology because their search for justice in the world, the Pope has accused them of embracing Marxist ideas and introducing something alien to the teachings of the church. Now, saying that is not to deny that the mainstream Catholic Church itself has a lot of very enlightened policies in terms of seeking justice in various areas, but to a certain point. And then they see the liberation theologians who want to make structural changes in their societies to eliminate a lot of the causes of injustice as they see it. They see that as being alien. So this particular individual, who will remain unnamed, found in Islam the balance between the two extremes, if you will. In other words, a way of life that is predicated on spirituality. Because spirituality, generally the things associated with the ruh. ثم سواه ونفخ فيه من روحه وجعل لكم السمع والأبصار والأفئدة قليلا ما تشكرون. So the ruh, the spirit that was breathed into us from Allah, it's a creation of Allah, it's not a part of Allah, but it's a creation from beyond this world that allows us to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in any case, in partnership with our intellect, in any case, at the very beginning of Quran, the first description of the believer immediately negates a Muslim being a materialist. And so a Muslim can't be a Marxist because Marxism is a materialistic philosophy and ideology. So Allah Ta'ala says, Alif Lam Mim, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. And the first description of the believers in the Quran, الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ. Those who believe in the unseen. In other words, that which is beyond this, or this, or this. Oh, mashallah. Or this. Beyond what we can perceive with our physical senses. That's materialism. We can empirically verify its existence. I can touch it. I can smell it. I can eat it. I can hear it. If it's not that, it's not real. Allah Ta'ala tells us immediately, no, as a believer we believe. We have to believe in that which is beyond this. الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ. And so that's the realm of the spirit. That's the realm of these realities that we witness in our own being that are beyond this, such as our emotions, such as our longing for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so Islam brought this spirituality, but it also brought not as an external component or something that's been grafted onto it, but as something that is integral to the fundamental teachings of our religion, a love for justice. A love for justice, advocacy of justice, a program that encourages us to pursue justice. So we don't need any sort of external liberation theology. All we need is the Quran, the Sunnah of our Prophet ﷺ, and the teachings that our scholars over time have bequeathed unto us. So Allah Ta'ala reminds us by way of example, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرُكُمْ أَن تُؤَدُّوا الْأَمَانَاتِ إِلَى أَهْلِهَا وَإِذَا حَكَمْتُمْ بَيْنَ النَّاسِ أَن تَحْكُمُوا بِالْعَدْلِ. إن الله نعم ما يعظكم به إن الله كان سميعا بصيرا. That Allah commands you, إن الله يأمركم, that you deliver the trust to its rightful possessors. This is an act of justice, because justice is to usurp the rights or the property of others. Whereas Allah is saying anything you have that is not rightfully yours has to be given to the ones who should possess it. And to addul amanati ila ahliha. And then at another level, وَإِذَا حَكَمْتُمْ بَيْنَ النَّاسِ, if you judge or rule over or judge between people, you should do so with justice. In other words, impartiality. Not usurping one person's right for the sake of another, but ruling with impartiality to the extent humanly possible. And so these are fundamental obligations in our religion that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala admonishes us. All of you are young. Most of you are young. All of you are young. Some of you are young in years, and some of you are young at heart. But you're all young. Allah Ta'ala, or the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and I recently gave a khutbah on this hadith, where Allah Ta'ala mentions, or the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam mentions, سبعة عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال سبعة يظلهم الله في ظله يوم لا ظل إلا ظله إمام عادل وشاب نشأ في عبادة الله عز وجل. This is what we want to focus on, these two. Then he goes on, ورجل قلبه معلق بالمساجد ورجلان تحبا في الله اجتمع عليه وتفرق عليه ورجل دعته امرأة ذات حسن وجمال أو منصب وجمال وقال إني أخاف الله ورجل تصدق بصدقة فأخفاها حتى لا تعلم شماله ما تنفق يمينه ورجل ذكر الله خاليا ففاضت عيناه. حديث متفق عليه. But we want to concentrate on the first part. There are 7 types of people Allah will shade in the shade of His throne on a day there will be no shade other than that shade. The first one He mentions, Imamun Adil, a just leader. And this is immediate reference to the leader of the Muslim community, the Khalif or the Amir al-Mu'mineen. But it includes all of us, because in some capacity all of us are leaders, including all of you young brothers and sisters. You're leaders. Your being here is a manifestation of your leadership. Because if you reflect, how many of your friends, each and every one of you knows at least 10 Muslims who aren't here? And most of them you couldn't drag here. Are you going to mass? Or they're just going to tell us about Islam? Or you're Muslims, I think that's what you should be told about. I don't want to go. There's no fun. There's no ping pong tables at Mass. There's no foosball. They don't have basketball hoops up at night so we can have 3-on-3 basketball. Organizers, you're making notes. But you get my point, right? But you guys are here. And the reason you're here is that you're leaders. In other words, you're doing something to prepare yourself to do things that most people don't do. You're preparing yourself. You're showing courage. Leadership involves courage. You're showing courage by challenging yourself. So not courage in a dramatic Hollywood sense, where someone drops in the river across the street and you jump in the freezing river and swim out to them, and then music starts playing in the background, and you grab them, and no, not that kind of courage, but the courage to go against your peers. That's a greater form of courage. The courage to challenge yourself. the courage to expose yourself to ideas that might challenge you. That's a greater form of courage than jumping into the river to save someone. Jumping into the river, that's a courageous act. But most people would do that. Even if they weren't brave, if someone, their life is threatened, they jump in. They might not think about it. Then afterwards they're shivering, oh my God, how on earth did I do that? They don't even know. Just most people instinctively would do that. But most people can't challenge themselves. Most people can't go against the grain of their society. And the people that do, those are the people that become leaders. It takes patience, it takes courage. When Allah discusses how some of the prophets of the Bani Israel assumed leadership in their society, and this is general for everyone, but specific for them. He describes them, وَجَعَلْنَا مِنْهُمْ أَئِمَّةً يَهْدُونَ بِأَمْرِنَا لَمَّا صَبَرُوا وَكَانُوا بِآيَاتِنَا يُوقِنُونَ. That we made from them leaders who guided by our command after they patiently persevered. And they were absolutely certain concerning, they were absolutely had certainty, conviction. So that's what gave them leadership. So they patiently persevered. In other words, they bore the hardship that came in doing something most people weren't really willing to do. So justice challenges us to do things most people aren't willing to do. Justice involves, as was articulated earlier, it involves challenging one's society. It involves going against the grain. So the grain in our society right now, if you will, is that we have a war economy. And amongst those suffering Americans, in addition to those that were mentioned by the previous speaker, whose name I should get, so I can't say, by Omar, Hafidhahullah, and may Allah give him long life filled with barakah and khidmah and service. One category he didn't mention, and not because just you can't mention everything. Say, Omar, you missed one. Probably missed 100. But one category is 18 war veterans killed themselves somewhere in this country. How often? Guess. Every year? No. Every day, 6,000 a year. Every day, somewhere in this country, 18 veterans of these wars are killing themselves. That's more than the war themselves are taking. This tells us something is wrong with our society, as was mentioned. But there's a lot of momentum pushing that war machine. It's the billions of dollars in federal contracts. It's the factories in particular political districts that the politician won't ever challenge. Because if they shut that factory down, there are going to be a lot of unemployed people. So they don't care that the fact that this factory is making bombs or cruise missiles or Hellfire rockets, and that the only way to stay in business is what? Is to use them. And to use them you need, someone said it over here, you need war. And so we're caught in this cycle. We have to manufacture enemies. Today is the enemy of the time are the Muslims. Now there's already a shift towards which direction? Huh? North Korea / the Chinese. There's already a shift. But we shouldn't, once we've moved on, in the past is the Vietnamese, and then the Nicaraguans, and then the Panamanians, and the Grenadians. Most people can't even find Grenada on the map. It's so small, you might miss it. Down there in the Caribbean. We invaded that nation because they were a threat. But as Muslims, we shouldn't be satisfied when we're no longer the enemy. We shouldn't, oh, alhamdulillah, glad that's over. That's not justice. Is that justice? Now we're not bombing Muslims anymore for no reason, but we're bombing the North Koreans or the Chinese or some little island in the South Pacific. That's not justice. Justice demands that we say we don't bomb or declare war against anyone unjustly. That's justice. That's justice, brothers and sisters. And if we allow these conditions to exist, as Dr. King, who was quoted earlier again by Brother Omar, may Allah preserve him, because he has a lot more time and longer normal course of things to help to guide you than I do. Muslims we don't retire, we just fade away. Like they say, old soldiers don't die, they just fade away. So may Allah preserve all of our young scholars and dua who are up and coming. Absolutely. Martin Luther King, he mentioned, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So whenever we see an injustice, and we don't need Dr. King to tell us that, our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has instructed us in the very same words, just in a more general terminology. مَنْ رَأَى مِنْكُمْ مُنْكَرًا فَلْيُغَيِّرْهُ بِيَدِهِ. Any one of you who sees something wrong, let him change it with his hand. فَإِنْ لَمْ يَسْتَطَعْ فَبِلِسَانِهِ. If he can't, let him speak out against it. وَإِنْ لَمْ يَسْتَطَعْ فَبِقَلْبِهِ وَذَلِكَ أَضْعَفُ الْإِيمَانِ. And if he's still unable to, let him hate it in his heart. That's the lowest level of faith. So we have no excuse as a Muslim. We might not be able to change things with our hands, but we can speak out against them. If that becomes too dangerous or perilous, then we can hate it in our hearts. And now the hatred of it in our hearts is like sparks, embers, waiting for gasoline to be poured on it. What happens to the fire smoldering if you put some lighter fluid on it? That's hating it in the heart. When the circumstances change, then one's tongue will ignite, burning with the truth. And the circumstances change, one will be moved to action because those embers will be ignited and burst into flames of justice and truth and advocacy for the truth. So this is how we should approach this life. We have to be courageous. Cowardly people have never changed the world. Cowardly people have never changed the world. We can have all the lofty thoughts, but when the rubber meets the road, you've heard that expression, right? When push comes to shove, then we have to stand strong. And we have to be courageous. And we have to not back down if the truth is at stake. We can't back down in the face of the threats to the truth. So we have to be courageous. There's a letter, one of my favorite letters from early American periods. It's a letter that Abigail Adams, who was the wife of John Adams, the second president of this country, the mother of John Quincy Adams, the sixth president of this country, she wrote a letter to John Quincy Adams when he was 12 years old. He had gone to France with his father to be the first ambassador to France, the father, John Adams. And she said in that letter, she said, these are times in which a genius would wish to live. So it was the height of the Revolutionary War, 1780. Not of strife and turmoil, a new nation's being born. So it was a very difficult time. She's there by herself, her husband and her son are gone. And she wrote to her 12-year-old son, these are times in which a genius would wish to live. It is not in the still calm of life nor in the repose of a Pacific station that great character is formed. Would Cicero have shown so distinguished an orator if he had not been roused, kindled, and inflamed by the tyranny of Catiline, Verres, and Mark Antony? All history bears witness to this, that challenges form great character. So the challenges presented by the injustices we find in our society, if we stand up and meet those challenges, we'll be people of great character. You know, great character isn't formed playing Xbox, channel surfing, surfing on the net. No, great character is formed in dealing with difficulties. And in dealing with the difficulties we see before ourselves, we have to put aside empty, idle, foolish things. We have to put it aside. As young people, there's a time for lightheartedness. Our Prophet ﷺ had light moments. But those light moments, he joked around. The Sahaba, once they ate their watermelon, what would they do sometimes? They take the rind, the green water, and they throw the rinds at each other. They have watermelon rind fights. But when the matter got serious, they were men. When the matter got serious, they were men. And so there's a time for lightheartedness, but don't fall into the American trap. The American trap has made lightheartedness the sentence and seriousness the punctuation marks. No, we're serious people, even as youth, but our seriousness is punctuated with moments and times of lightheartedness. So we have our athletic activities, we have our gatherings, we have our pajama parties or whatever. But those are punctuation marks in a serious life. As young people, if you're going to meet the challenges, you have to prepare yourself. And to prepare yourself, you have to live a serious life, even as young. The American trap is adolescence. This is an American invention. There is no adolescence in Philistine. How many of you are from Palestine? Allahu Akbar. Philistine in the house. All right, is there adolescence in Philistine? There's childhood and adulthood. And children are practicing to be adults. They're in training to be adults. So you go, how many of you have been back home? MashaAllah. You go to the souk, right? You see sometimes children are running the little stall, right? Handling the money. And they're perfectly like little bitty adults. You get scared, oh my God, that kid's so serious. Because we're used to Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck and Goofy and Barney. That's when I was young. Okay, you guys used to SpongeBob. Yeah, SpongeBob and who knows what. Who? Okay, him too. Oh, her too. Thought I'd add a little humor. But seriously, there's no adolescent. That young person is in training to be an adult. And that's why when adult things happen, the children aren't falling apart. When father goes off to jail, the oldest son might be 11 years old. What does he do? He stands up and tries to fill in for his father. Right or wrong? The young girl, her mother gets sick or a bomb falls on the house. She's 15, 16, she becomes the mother. Right or wrong? She's not looking for her, pacifier and get a SpongeBob doll to hold on to. No, she's standing up because she's been prepared to live a life of seriousness. And so to address the injustices in our society. And it's not just the wars, mass incarceration, people being stopped on the street for no reason, violating their constitutional rights, the illegal searches. and then thrown in jail on petty pretenses. We have to challenge that because it's destroying lives. No viable immigration policy. People here working, paying taxes, being taxed. No political rights. We have to challenge that. We have to challenge all of the injustices that we see, and to do that in a meaningful way, we have to prepare ourselves. So in conclusion, let me give you some suggestions, what you should be doing as young people. Number one, you should be learning languages. Not just Arabic. Arabic's a given. You should be learning Arabic. You should be working to memorize Quran. You should be learning Spanish. Right? The fastest growing population in this country is Latino population. And many of their issues related to immigration, related to various issues, are the same issues. The domination of their lands by dictatorial regimes. These are the same issues that Muslims are dealing with. So there has to be meaningful solidarity. The greatest key to that solidarity is learning the language of the people. We should be learning Spanish, Arabic. We should be learning Chinese. If we're going to be a strong community, we have to be economically viable. And there's no economic viability if there are not strong economic relations with the Chinese. Should be learning Chinese. This also makes us more employable when we get into our adulthood. So we should be learning languages. We should be naturally learning the Quran. We should be systematically learning various aspects of our religion to a high level. And it's our responsibility of adults to facilitate that, because the mind is incredible. So all our time that we're wasting doing this and that, that time should be put to serious pursuits. We should be networking on our high school and college campuses with other organizations representing other racial and ethnic minorities, in addition to those groups from the mainstream society that are advocating for justice. Because if we're going to really work for justice, a lot of the issues we're pursuing, we can't do it alone as Muslims. Muslims can't by ourselves in this country, especially under the current circumstances and situations. We can't change the situation in Palestine. We can demonstrate, we can protest, but if we're working with other social justice organizations who are also working for Palestine, and we add the critical weight of our community, we can help to make a big difference, especially as we move into the future. The same goes with immigration rights, mass incarceration, foreign policy, challenging the war machine. None of this as Muslims we can do in isolation. So we have to begin now, as we're students, to begin networking and forming viable coalitions with other social justice organizations and groups. And then we have power. And then we have a lot of numbers we can bring to the table, which gives us a very strong negotiating position inside of those coalitions. This is the kind of work we have to do. So as I said, there's time to be young, there's time to have fun, but those should be punctuation marks in a life of seriousness. Look at the letter that Abigail Adams wrote, 12-year-old son, 12 years old. These are times in which a genius would wish to live. Great character is not formed in the calm of a Pacific station, or the calm of life or repose of a Pacific station. In other words, you're struggling. You're over there in France. You crossed this ocean. The ship wrecked off the coast of Spain. They had to walk over the Pyrenees. She's saying, you're young, but this is what's going to build character. And then she says, and from these difficulties emerges and struggles, they form the character of the hero and the statesman. And so all of you should see yourselves as future heroes. A hero is a person that can be bigger than what they ordinarily would be in the face of a challenging situation. ordinarily you wouldn't jump in that freezing river. Say, you crazy. But in a challenging situation, someone's life is at stake. Now you're bigger than you ordinarily are, and bam, you jump right in. And a statesman or stateswoman, a statesperson is a person that looks at the world as it is and then works out solutions and problems based on that reality. So don't look at the world in idealistic terms, but look at the world as it is. When we look at it in idealistic terms, we look for easy and simplistic solutions. You know, we'll have the revolution. Really? You know, we're just having trouble getting the Muslims to park in rows and not to park in other people's parking spaces, and you're talking about taking over the world. That's idealism. Realism says this is how the world is. This is how the powers of the world are arrayed. In this arrangement, we have little power. But how can we, in light of that circumstance, best organize ourselves to be effective? This is the role of the statesman. How can we plant seeds? Because right now, even if the seeds are planted, our baskets aren't big enough to collect all the fruit. How can we plant seeds that will bear fruit that future generations will harvest? That's the role of the statesman. And if you all can begin to look at the world with seriousness, inshallah, you will be those heroes. You will be those statespersons. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Now we're opening time for the question and answer session. There's a lot of questions. We're going to try to skip through them as fast as we can. So if we could all please remain seated and get down.
Okay, this first question is, how does justice for women fit into the overall struggle for justice that Islam calls for? I ask because that is something which I know Islam promotes, but our various cultures, including mainstream American culture, do not. I would say that it is true that most, actually all cultures today are probably not applying the justice between genders that is called for in our faith. So I would say it fits very importantly, especially for us as American Muslims, because of the fact that there is a perception that there is gender inequity in Islam by our peers, by both Muslim Americans who are applying a cultural perspective on gender equity, as well as non-Muslims, obviously, from what they see of the cultural application. So I would say it is a very important cause and should fit in very critically to a strategic vision put together by a group of young and older people who would come together to set a path for our movement in our nation. So, so whoever wrote this, keep it in mind and join such an effort. Okay. The next one is, what if you find yourself hating Muslims and Islam? I wasn't like this before until a lot of my friends turned on me. And it's also similar to another one, which was, this other one is also saying, unfortunately, I disagree with many things in the Islamic culture. I don't ever want to convert away from Islam, meaning, and I will always be a Muslim, but I really wish I had more faith / iman, or kind of felt it more. And so I think both of these are have the same root cause. And my heart goes out to whoever wrote these two and goes out to whoever feels the same, because I know there's many young people in America today who were born into Islam or who read about Islam, and then what they see after even some who convert, what they see in application is very different than what they read about as the message. So what I will suggest to those who wrote this is do not judge the message of our beloved, peace and blessings upon him, which is the message of God to all the prophets. Don't judge that based on what Muslims are doing. Because if we judge, and especially what you see in America today applied as Islam or called to as Islam. Because as I contended earlier, my contention is that we are very far from what the actual mission of our beloved would look like were we to take it up and actually implement it. I don't believe it's been taken up and implemented in America. I believe that still needs to be done. So don't judge Islam, the message of our beloved, peace and blessings upon him, or anything related to it by what you see from Muslims today. Assume that what you see from Muslims today is a significant partition or a significant departing, from our beloved, peace and blessings upon him and his message. Assume that. Make that your default assumption so that you can inquire about what is really Islam's view on X, Y, Z that you're seeing being applied. And I'll contend that you'll find that the majority of what you dislike about the application today has absolutely nothing to do with our beloved, peace and blessings upon him. In fact, if he saw it, he would fight it as munkar, as if it was a munkar to fight. That's my contention.
I'll do the rest.
Okay. What was the punishment sent down on Prophet Shu'aib's people? It was also the sayha, or the awful cry, similar to Salih. Their issue was, cheating in trade, and Salih's people, their issue was technological advancement. So there's a little similarity between the two of thinking that they have power, they have abilities and technologies that are better and don't need to follow justice in them. Assalamu alaikum. Is it okay to move during salah? More like swaying unconsciously. So I would say probably best not to. If we see an injustice act, should we be quick to jump on it and make it just, or should we first have more knowledge on justice in Islam before we try to fix injustice? I would say that the concept of justice is actually ingrained in us as a human family before we were born by Allah, by Him witnessing us to Him. So if you're certain that something is unjust, you're most likely right that it's unjust. And your humanity is what's seeing that. The soul that Allah breathed into you is what's seeing that. So if you can do something about it, do it. And of course, our beloved Imam, he shared that if you can't do something about it, at least speak about it. And if you can't, then you need to at least hate it in your heart. The next one is, what if standing up for something that is wrong would put you, your family, your people, or people you know in danger? And again, that goes back to the hadith that Imam Zaid mentioned, which is that you should either speak up against it if you can, and if you can't, then hate it with the sincere intention that as soon as you can muster the ability and the power to do something about it, you should, and with the work and the effort to obtain that strategic ability within your community and your circles, i.e. rallying with those who can take up the same cause with you and so on. The next one is, how does one react to injustice even when his voice is not powerful? I would say obtain power, like the way I just mentioned, which is rallying with people who believe in the same thing, being relevant to your community, taking up causes, not just the ones that are for foreigners to America, but the ones that are also unjust and for everyone in America, so that you can be heard when you're taking up a cause that's for a foreigner to America. Also, how do we as Muslims just react to other Muslims who do injustice, even when we are being patient and trying to teach our brother, sister? I would say to continue to speak and teach, and then to do different, to be a clear example of what's different, what's a more just way of dealing with things. And then the final one I'll answer is, why would the people of Lut alayhi salam be punished with an earthquake? Does it associate with the homosexuality in the town? Well, their punishment was actually that the town was turned upside down. And so what I will suggest is likely that the nature of the crime was that it was turning human nature upside down. So perhaps that's what Allah did to the town as a punishment for that reason. But again, these are not things that the Prophet, peace and blessings upon him, said specifically about that punishment. These are from interpreters or you could say sort of inclination or inspirations that people would have as they're looking at the verses. So it's not Quran, so you don't have to necessarily believe that correlation that I shared. Jazakumullah khair.
Takbir. Okay. What do you say to people who compete on which country is oppressed the most? For example, people argue between Palestine and Syria, which is more oppressed. You shouldn't, first of all, you shouldn't engage in those sort of arguments. But we should, as Muslims, sometimes you have to engage in a sort of triage. If you know, if a doctor sees a group of patients, triage means 3 categories. One category is if they don't get immediate help, they're going to die. The second is they need help, but not right away. And the third category is they're beyond help. And so if they look at that, they try to get the help to those who need it immediately. And then to those who can wait longer, and then those who they know they're terminal, then they don't prioritize treating them. But if they have time or resources, then they try to ease their pain and make their passing as comfortable as possible. So in our view of things, wallahu alam, there are some situations that require immediate relief. And one of those is the situation in Syria. Because every day, 90 to 100, 120 people are being killed. Every day, tens of thousands of people at this point are being forced from their homes. So this is a massive crisis. So without belittling any other crisis, this is a crisis that might require a bit more priority, not dropping everything else, but prioritizing. And Palestine is one Allah doesn't place on any people a burden greater than they can bear. The Palestinian people are people of strength, character, and patience. And they're also a people who are generous. And so, for example, if we say, well, we have to temporarily prioritize the issue in Syria. When Gaza's going on, that's a priority, people being bombed, to get that stopped. But the Palestinian people themselves are the first to support the Syrian cause. Why was Mukhayyam Yarmouk in Damascus destroyed? Because the Palestinians in Yarmouk rose up and supported the opposition, even though they knew the risks. They knew the risks that were involved. Why the Palestinians who have so little, meager, almost nothing, send over $1 million to Katrina sufferers, or to the earthquake people in Bangladesh a couple years ago? Because they understand that in beautiful Islamic fashion that was recited not here in Altaf Hussein in the early election. وَيُؤْثِرُونَ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ وَلَوْ كَانَ بِهِمْ خَصَاصَةٌ. They give preference to others even though they have dire needs. And so we shouldn't see a competition, but we should look at these issues as the people themselves look at them. And pray for Allah's relief for everyone. But everyone deserves our support, but we sometimes have to prioritize and engage in a bit of triage. May Allah make it easy for us, and may Allah bless the people in Palestine and give them relief. And bless the people in Sham and give them relief, and Iraq and Afghanistan, Pakistan, all over the Ummah. Is McDonald's chicken and various meats from other fast food restaurants haram? The way I was taught is absolutely haram. There are other opinions. About one of the fatwa that I put a lot of trust in was from Sheikh Suleiman Dunya. He was an Egyptian Azhari sheikh. And I know that some other shuyukh also from Azhar have different opinion, but we have no excuse. We have no excuse. You can get halal meat in the mail now. You get a mail to your house. We have no excuse to be eating at McDonald's and Burger King. It's not good for you. How many of you saw Super Size Me? That stuff will kill you. So, fast food nation. We don't need to be eating that. It's just leave aside even if it were halal, we don't need to be eating it. but it's not halal. But if you get another fatwa, البر حسن الخلق والإثم ما حاك في النفس وكرهت أن يطلع عليه الناس. Righteousness is good character, and sin is that which causes agitation in your heart, and you wouldn't want people to see you doing it. So when you're eating your Whopper, it doesn't trouble you, then Allah ma'ak. But it would trouble me gravely. So anyway, how do you respond to a racist comment without overreacting? Realize most people are ignorant. And as either Umar, Hafidhullah, or someone else, they wrote on it, وَإِذَا طَبَهُمُ الْجَاهِلُونَ قَالُوا سَلَامًا. So when the ignorant people approach them, say peace. Don't get into an argument with these people. This is what they want. This is what they prosper on. Flip the script. And I was mentioning earlier the saying of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, وَلَا تَسْتَوِ الْحَسَنَةُ وَلَا السَّيِّئَةُ ادفع بالتي هي أحسن فإذا الذي بينك وبينه عداوة كأنه ولي حميم. Subhanallah. And we've all seen that. So as opposed to overreacting, just say, listen, Mr. Militia Man, put your gun up, because I know the Second Amendment, but put the gun up and let's talk about it. You know, you have a point. You know, there are some people in our religion that go beyond bounds. There are. What, we're going to lie about it? That's when we get in trouble. Oh, Islam's the religion of peace. Muslims don't do this. Well, there's some pretty good actors in some of our countries masquerading as Muslim. No, okay, you got a point, but let's talk about it, because you know you shouldn't generalize. That's a small fraction. And then you engage. Let's sit down, have some tea. And the guy's disarmed. Why? Because you did something, or because Allah did something? فإذا الذي بينك وبينه عداوة كأنه ولي حميم. فجائية. Suddenly, you didn't expect it to turn out like that. Why? Because we don't know the depths of Allah Ta'ala's power. So Allah could turn that person's heart, and that person can end up taking shahada. So don't see that person as an antagonistic enemy that needs to be opposed. Kafir, dog bone eating. Talk about my deen like that. Say, no, I think you've been misinformed. And if you just calm down, we could talk about it. We can even go over here and to this cafe, get some tea, and discuss it. And you don't know what the outcome might be. But the outcome is with Allah, not with you. لَيْسَ لَكَ مِنَ الْأَمْرِ شَيْءٍ. طيب. How do you respond to the statement, Merry Christmas? Say, وَإِيَّاكُمْ, and same to you. Because if they say we're celebrating Jesus' birth, we're happy Isa was born, alayhi salam. Right? Yawma wulidtu. See, so it's mentioned in Quran that he's blessed the day he was born. But we don't think God was born, or son of God. We think one of the great prophets, one of the ulul azm, was born. So we're happy. So, but to avoid controversy, just say same to you. And then it makes things easy. When facing a hardship and it gets rough, what can you tell yourself to keep going? What are some words? What can we do? What about when everyone is against you? That's an opportunity for you to have ikhlas. Because when everyone's against you, you know only Allah can be for you. And so that gives you an opportunity for ikhlas. You know, I can't rely on this one. He's against me. She's against me. He's against me. She's against me. MashaAllah. This is why when the Prophet ﷺ sent Mu'adh and Ali radiallahu anhuma to Yemen, His instruction at the end of instructions, وَإِيَّاكَ وَالدَّعْوَةَ الْمَظْلُومِ فَلَيْسَ بَيْنَهُ وَبَيْنَ اللَّهِ حِجَابٌ. Beware of the prayer of an oppressed person, because there's no veil or barrier between that prayer and Allah Ta'ala. Why? The oppressed, poor person can't rely on anyone in the world. So when they pray to Allah, they're praying with ikhlas. And that's a powerful prayer. So when everyone's against you, turn to Allah. When everyone's against you, turn to Allah. And understand that we can't, at the end of the day, we can't do anything anyway. It's all up to Allah. Ibn Ata'illah, the great Egyptian sage, one of his sayings, he said, مَا تَيَسَّرَ مَطْلَبٌ أَنْتَ طَالِبُهُ بِنَفْسِكَ. مَا تَيَسَّرَ مَطْلَبٌ أَنْتَ طَالِبُهُ بِنَفْسِكَ. وَمَا تَعَسَّرَ مَطْلَبٌ أَنْتَ طَالِبُهُ بِرَبِّكَ. Nothing you seek relying on yourself will ever be easy, and nothing you seek relying on your Lord will ever be difficult. So when everyone's against you, this is a perfect opportunity to have sincerity and ikhlas with Allah Ta'ala. Then you'll see amazing things happen. So really, when Allah turns everyone against you, He's done you a favor, because He's removed the delusion that these people can do things for me. He's removed that delusion from us and put us in a space we can only rely on Him. I used to rely on Ahmed. Ahmed's against me. I used to rely on Fatima. Fatima was sending out text messages. She tweeted to everyone that I failed the math test. Can't rely on her. MashaAllah. You can rely on Allah now with sincerity, ikhlas, and purity. Amazing things will happen. Indeed, try it, you'll like it. Tayyib, how can we improve our Islamic ethics in our kids? First of all, we have to be as great an example as we possibly can, as parents, as mentors, guardians, because actions speak louder than words. That's generally true. That's why people say it. But it's particularly true for children. The worst thing we can say to a child is, do as I say, don't do as I do. I don't want you smoking when you grow up. Your smoking is far more powerful message than your words, don't smoke. It's bad for you. That's why I had heart surgery last year. So that's the first thing. Make sure you're setting a strong moral example. Secondly, protect your child's influences. Al-mar' ala deen khalili. فَلْيَنْظُرْ أَحَدُكُمْ مَنْ يُخَالِلْ. A person's on the religion of their friends, their companions. Guard your child's circle of friends. Put them around pious people. Put them around people who don't have a television in your house and you taking it out of your house. So when they get together, they're not talking about what SpongeBob did. Oh, sorry about that. Or what Britney's wearing, or how much weight Oprah lost. They're talking about the deen. How much Quran have you memorized? Did you finish Juz Tabarak yet? That's what they're talking about. Put your children in good company. That's the best thing. He said one more, but we could do the last three very quickly. I know there's another session. How can we, there's only two, because we just did that one. The Arab Spring is taking place throughout the Middle East, North Africa. You can't do that one quickly. See him in the hallway. Now, this is a very important question. Can you please elaborate on how a young Muslim can help get justice for those prisoners, such as Imam Jamil Al-Amin or Sister Afia Siddiqui and others? What can a young Muslim do? First of all, understand the best thing you can do is get a good education, so that when you grow up and you become an adult and you get out in the world, you will increase your effectiveness in any realm you're operating in. So don't try as a young person right now that I'm going to get Afia Siddiq out of jail. If us adults can't do it, or haven't done it, you're not going to do it. You can be part of an effort working together with others, writing letters, doing things within your means, but most of your youth has to be focused, as we said, on preparing yourself so that when you're an adult, you're educated, you know languages, you've built networks with people. And believe me, those networks benefit you in the future. So put yourself in a position to be able to do something. Put yourself, if you're inclined to make money, put yourself in a position to make a lot of money. One of the reasons Imam Jamil's in jail is he had inadequate legal defense because he couldn't afford a better defense. You know, this country, you go to the doctor, you're not asked, where can you hurt? You're asked what? Do you have insurance? How are you going to pay? You go to a lawyer, the first question is, how much justice can you afford? So put yourself in a position to make some money so that the likes of Imam Jamil, the likes of Afia Siddiqui can get a world-class defense or world-class appeal. So how you can help is not be getting emotional and worked up, but by systematically putting yourself in a position in the future to be able to make a difference in this world. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.